Okay, of these 75 dream schools that you identify, I don't know if you rank them. If you
I don't.
did rank them,
Yeah.
share with me your top 5 to 10, just as an example. Because what I hear you saying and what I take away is the truth is it should be highly tailored to you. And we're going to get into some of the details of why in terms of regionality, cost, size, and so forth. But setting aside the individualized nature of it for a moment, give me some examples. Give me your top 5 to 10.
Okay, so I'm going to give a bunch here. Southern Methodist University, SMU, Florida International University, Michigan State. Everybody thinks of Michigan, Michigan State, the University of Connecticut, Washington State University. So those are some big state universities. Let's throw a few privates in there as well. Let's think about places like Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Denison University nearby in Columbus, St. Olaf up in Minnesota, or Dickinson University in southern Pennsylvania. What all of these places have in common, by the way, beyond the fact that you're able to get in, is we were able to look at data of their graduates 5 and 10 years out. And what you would be amazed at is that their average salaries actually overlap with the average salaries of those from more selective universities. That's the thing. We think that, like, if you go to an Ivy or you go to one of these really hard to get into public universities, that you're going to be way out in front in terms of earnings. And what ends up happening is we over-index on the outliers there. We look at the people who got the highest salaries rather than the average salaries. And when we're talking about average salaries, there's a lot more overlap with these schools.
Okay, I want to dig into a couple of the schools you mentioned
Yep.
because I did see a little bit of a black cat inside of that grouping. I saw a little bit like a black sheep in the herd that didn't quite fit, at least in me trying to make some generalizations from your list. But I'm going to set that aside for just one moment. I want to talk to you about two elements, and then we'll come back to the list that you offered. Let's start with something that I preach to my son a lot, and that is the element of regionality.
Yep.
So I went away to college. I'm from Texas. I live in Texas. My career's taken me a few different places in my life, but my culture, my people, and ultimately, I think my job market was going to be in Texas. That was the fat part of the bell curve of probabilities for my life. And yet I went away to school in California, a great school that I loved in Pepperdine. But my wife went away in the same way. I have other people in my life I know that have gone away to school. Now, I did it that way, and I know the price you pay in doing that. There's a lot of pros. You expose yourself to different people, different environments. You grow as a human being. But the price that you pay is the sacrifice in the networking and career opportunities and social connections that you make. I have a lot of friends, but I don't get to see them because they're in California or scattered across the country. Where my friends in Texas that went to schools in Texas maintain lifelong, frequent friendships and business networks. So I have preached basically what I think you're preaching as well here, regionality.
No doubt about it. Most kids actually go to college within 75 to 100 miles of home. Like, this idea that you're going to go states away like you did doesn't really happen for a lot of people. They're mostly going to look at, a couple of big publics within their state and so forth. And so when we actually put together this list of 75, we made sure that there was kind of geographic diversity, because most people are going to go within their region or even within their state. They're also going to look at a mix of publics and privates, right? You went to Pepperdine, a private, but 60% of students are going to go to probably a big public because they want football, Greek life, all that stuff. And so we also wanted to make sure there were a lot of publics on this list as well.
But not just that, not just the likelihood of a kid going to school close to where he's from, but I've said this as well. And I think there's a lot of employers that might disagree with me. I did come back and I went to law school in the state of Texas at the University of Texas. And I would argue, if you came to Dallas, and this applies to any state, I'm not trying to make this particular to Texas. If you grew up in Ohio or Florida or, Arizona, for Texas, I would say that an SMU or a UT law degree is as valuable as a Harvard or Yale law degree. Now, that being said, Harvard and Yale do carry a reputation. They simply do. But you're not gaining that much if your goal is to end up back in your region. You know what I mean? I think that it's not just likelihood and probability, but it's local reputation that matters as well. And I think that probably applies to undergrad. If you live in Florida, what's a University of Florida degree for your potential employment versus a Princeton degree?
Well, think about it, because most of the network is going to be more closely associated with that school within a region, right? Those are the people that are, and we saw this, by the way, in the data that we collected for the book, that most of those graduates are going to go within a certain number of states around that university. That means those people are going to be hiring. They're going to be the hiring managers. They're eventually, by the way, going to move up into senior leadership, CEO, and things like that. And so they're going to be the ones who are going to come back to campus. They're going to help get your resume into the job market and things like that. So you're right. There's no doubt about it that those bonds are much stronger in the regions that you go to. And the other thing that your question brings up is that you can actually go to a quote unquote less selected place as an undergraduate and still go to the Harvards and the Yales of the world. Every year I look at the list of undergraduate colleges that the new class of 1Ls, first year students at Harvard, went to. Like, they are a mix of colleges and universities around the country. So you don't have to go to like these top ranked undergraduate colleges. In fact, it's better to be that smaller fish or a big fish in a smaller sea, because you're actually going to do better as an undergraduate, and then you could really knock it out of the park and get into a better graduate school if that's what you think is a better graduate school.
Well, I'd love to follow up on that for a minute. Big fish, small pond. I feel like I've had conversations with others where they've argued, yeah, but you rise to the level of your competition, and you rise to the level of your surroundings. And I only amend my language there because not everybody is competition. But if you are the famous saying is what? That you are an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with in your life. That's kind of who you end up being. So isn't that an argument for going to a tougher school and not being the big fish?
It could also work the other way. And in fact, we have data in the book that shows everybody thinks, well, I want to swim along with all the tough fish in the sea, right? Well, it ends up that you go to these schools, first of all, the competition is a lot harder than it was in your local high school. Because remember, your local high school might have, this much of a geographic area. And now you have the rest of the world at some of these highly selected places. They're also really competitive. One of the things I heard from all of these students I talked to is that there's competition to get into every club, every class. It's like a constant competition, and the sharks come out in some of these places, right? And so we saw data in the book that actually in some cases you might be better off being that bigger fish, even if it's a bigger sea. I met a mother in Houston whose kid went off to major in electrical engineering at Stanford, ended up dropping out of not only the major but of Stanford. His backup school was Texas A&M. Given the data on him, he would have actually been better off at Texas A&M, would have had a lot more support from the faculty, because you know what the faculty said to him at Stanford? You're a dime a dozen here. Like, that's okay if you fail, because we have 20 other kids who are going to do better. At Texas A&M, they would have helped him.
So then let's talk about now cost.
Yep.
There's such a wide range on cost, and this is a little bit why I identified, quite honestly, I identified SMU as your black sheep in the description of others. I can't speak to the cost of the other private institutions that you brought up in Ohio and Pennsylvania, Dickinson, Case Western.
Yeah.
But I mean, SMU is one of the most expensive colleges in the country,
Sticker
as
price.
is TCU, as is Pepperdine. And I wonder, my friends and I often talk about this, like, what's the point in it being that expensive? It's so expensive. What are you getting out of that versus a cheaper state school or even a cheaper private school? I mean, for most of the 3 we just mentioned, you're talking about 80 grand a year, for SMU, TCU, Pepperdine, up to 90 grand a year. That's a lot of money. Is it worth the value?
Well, and it's a question that I ask in the book, and increasingly it's not. A lot of parents are skipping over these schools, even if, by the way, they can afford it, to go to a cheaper out-of-state option. But they're also looking at places that offer them big discounts. The prices that you just quoted, that's right. That's their sticker price. Increasingly, though, in a weird way, they're like any retailer now. They're like Macy's or Kohl's, which charge this, but give you these coupons that you walk in the door and you get a discount, even if you could afford to pay full price. And that's increasingly what's happening, even at the SMUs of the world, where they're giving you these big discount coupons, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 off that sticker price because they want you. And they know that even if they give you $20,000 off, you're still going to bring $50,000 or $60,000 in the door, which still is helpful. So many of these private colleges offer these discounts. In fact, the average discount now at an American private college is 55%, half off, essentially.
Wow.
So a lot of people are not paying that sticker price. Some are.
That's really fair, and I have noticed that. I have noticed, like you said, up to 50% seems not easily, but available if you want to go to one of these more expensive colleges. Okay, now we factored regionality in, we factored finance in. You talk about in the book a couple of different things that you should think about, essentially your ROI, your return on investment when it comes to college, and that is internships, skills, and networking. And I would use networking as your contemporaries. So that's your friendship group, your people that you hope to be around for the rest of your life. Internship is sort of networking up, older people getting jobs, and skills. The one, by the way, that I am the least sold on actually is skills. Because I still wonder how much college actually gives you in terms of skills and preparedness for the real world. It's often, and maybe because I'm a liberal arts guy, I didn't go biology, I didn't go engineering. It's more teaching you how to think and a broader base of knowledge than you learn your skills on the job. But let's talk about those three things in how you measure your dream school.
Well, we actually found, and you're right, most colleges don't teach real skills, but a lot of the dream schools in my list. So, for example, I mentioned Denison University earlier near Columbus, Ohio. They actually, not only during winter break, but during the summer, offer these skill-based courses that give students like real world skills. They learn how to use, Microsoft Excel, or they might get certified in AWS, or they might get project management certification. They actually give students real skills. So, for example, if you're a history major there, a great liberal arts major, if you're a great history major, most employers will want to know, can you visualize data? Can you give us these really nice visualizations of data? Well, Denison will give you that degree in history, but they will also give you a credential in data visualization, which will help you get a job. In fact, we see this in the data that if you have a degree but have very specific skills, say you're a marketing major, but data analytics on top of that. Like if Adobe Photoshop and you're a journalism major or whatever it might be, like those things really help. The problem is most colleges don't teach them. So one of the things I looked at when I was listing these schools is what are those that actually give you real world skills, hands-on skills that employers actually want, because most colleges don't do that.
But the hard thing about that, Jeff, is that skills are so perishable. I was a broadcast journalism major. I ended up going to law school. But I don't know that anything I necessarily learned as a broadcast journalism major, which is a little bit of a skills-based major, is applicable to what I do. And I'm literally in broadcast journalism today. I'm not sure it's applicable to what I do because, look, nobody's using any tapes around here. No one's, I don't know, all the different things that we did, those are 30 years gone, 20 years gone.
I was a broadcast major too, by the way. We used to cut the tape literally for the reel to reel back then, right? Like that is definitely a skill no one uses today.
And by the way, forget broadcast journalism. AI is doing that to every job. So like the nitty gritty skills everybody's learning. Now listen, I want to tip my hat and give respect to the people that learn real skills in college, like engineers, or doctors. But I actually don't think anybody's safe. Nobody's safe from AI making every skill perishable. So it's like,
you're no doubt about it. And I think that's the difference between
thinking.
I think that's the difference between a skill and a degree, right? So the skills I was just pointing out, like a Denison will give you, they're done in 2 or 3 week courses. They're not the degree itself. They're in addition to the degree. The University of Texas is doing this now in a lot of their majors. So it's not as a replacement for the major. I think the difference for us in broadcast journalism was it was the major. Rather, what this is as integrated into the major in a way. Because you're right, a skill you learn today is probably going to be out of date I would even argue by the time you even graduate sometimes from college. So
Right.
what I'm arguing for in this book is that a skill is a add-on or an integrate. I'm not adding on to the number of years, but it's added on to those, core courses that you're going to take where you're going to learn about, history and economics, learn how to write, learn how to think. Those are much more important over the long run. And by
Yes.
the way, I think are more durable in a world where AI could do a lot more jobs.